Thank you everyone for coming today. Firstly, I'd like to, everyone, you all know me, I'm Amy Linky from Mid Murray Landcare, and I'd just like to acknowledge the funding for this project is from Murray Lands and Riverlands Landscape Boards through their Grassroots Grants. Without their funding, we wouldn't exist, so it really supports us to deliver projects like this throughout the region and support landholders. We meet here today, I believe it's Ngaraku country, probably a bit of a crossover with Peremank as well. I'd like to thank James Walsh, who's the owner of this property. It's 160 acres and he's done direct seeding on here, which we can have a bit of, you can see some nice lines of the Dodonia coming up. He's overseas and we got involved on his property because we had some issues with goats. But I'd like to thank him for letting us hold this here today. This project seems a bit weird, but it's kind of stemmed from the Western Pygmy Possum project we've been running, which we've got over 300 habitat boxes out in the region and quite a few through here with landholders that we've been monitoring, and we do have possums using the boxes. And we thought, what can we do now to, instead of putting up more boxes and going, making houses for the possums, we know they're there, so what can we do now? So we thought the best thing would probably be to protect what we've already got. And we know there's goats in the region. So we thought if we can get people more actively engaged and aware that we have a bit of a goat issue out here, and doing something about that is going to protect the habitat for everything. So I mean, the possum's the cute thing that is a bit of a driver for people because they go, oh cute, let's help that out, but it helps everything, because we know from studies that goats do preferentially graze some species. So I think you wouldn't actually know when they go missing from the landscape because they're just grazed and grazed and grazed, like with Stringia rigida, down to nothing, like a nub. So it's never going to be able to recruit. And even other, bigger things like an electron, a bullock bush, if it sets seed and germinates and then the goats love it so much, it's just, they're not ever going to be able to have another cohort. It's going to be gone. So that's how this project has kind of moved out from, it's still part of our Western Pygmy Possum project, but we're kind of just trying to focus on the habitat. So one thing I wanted to mention with this project is using feral scan. So we've emailed everyone about this, but if everyone can use this and report sightings of goats in the region, it's really helpful, because if you have a look at this, this is some of the sightings so far of goats in this area. So this is like the Mid Murray Council area. We're here, that's up near Morgan, and it really helps people from the landscape board to support landholders and stuff once we find out where the goats are. So it helps us to know where to direct resources. And this is a close-up shot. So that's where we are. This is the Swan Reach Conservation Park. So you can see there's a bit of a concentration here of points. So people, if they see them just even on the side of the road, if you see a dead one or whatever, just map it, because that information does help with managing the issue of goats.
Good morning everyone, thanks for coming out. My name is Rob McGregor. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a district officer for the Murray Lands and Riverland Landscape Board, and I'm based at Cambrai. The reason I'm here today is to assist Amy with this project in regards to goats. The situation we have here is that when straying goats get onto people's property, as with the vegetation, they cause enormous amounts of damage. They'll eat almost anything, and the chance of those plants surviving further on is minimal sometimes. So the general idea is to try to keep them housed. Ian will go through more of the regulations on that shortly. One of the options that we have when landholders can spot feral goats in particular, and they use the feral scan thing that Ian's given out to everybody here, it gives us information on where those goats are straying, and it's pretty important for us to track that, we can then assist in formulating a plan to get some control on those. One of the things we will do is, landholders will contact us and we can assist in what way we can. One of the things that we do, and we had the water trough set up here some time ago to see if the goats would come to it. So particularly in hot weather, goats will always go to water and they'll go some distance for water. So a trough like this one, although it's not very big, can be quite popular in extreme weather. So if you set up a trough like this one in an enclosure, so if you see, I have portable goat yards on a trailer behind my vehicle over here. They can be taken anywhere and set up in a portable goat yard situation with water inside it. Sometimes if you've got some spare food, some hay or whatnot, you can pop that in there. The goats will come to the water and they'll graze on whatever they're around anyway. So ultimately, once they're in that thing, I'll demonstrate to you a couple of things on how to do that. But we can get to a point where they can go into the yards but cannot come out of those yards. And once they're in there, they can be dealt with humanely after that. So effectively, they can be taken away, not left on the land to do the damage that they can do. As I said before, they'll travel a long way for water, so that's probably the best thing you can do in the warmer weather to get them. There's a couple of photographs we got here that Amy sent me, just in regards to, this is the actual trough that these goats are around, right here in front of me. So if you can see the picture of those goats there. Now they're all happy they're having a drink and whatnot, but after a while they've had their drink and they start to stray, and they will then start to muster around a place just eating whatever they can eat, and the damage done in a short amount of time can be incredible. So if we can bring those into an area we can muster them in, we can then bring the appropriate people in to assist the landholder to remove them, all right? So there's a bit of support through different areas. Amy's got the project going in relation with us that we're assisting with. Adelaide Hills have also got some informational posters up and around the place as well. And we're encouraging everybody to use Feral Scan because it effectively will give us good data on where our populations are and where our high problem areas are. So when it comes to the goat yards, the simple setup with the goat yards, I've done a rudimentary diagram. Please forgive me, I'm not an artist. But effectively what will happen with those yards on the trailer, you can put the goats in any configuration you want. It doesn't have to be rectangular or square. It can be any shape you need, whatever suits the environment you're in or the area you're in. Ultimately, those goats will come in here for water. So they'll come in through an entrance gate here or a race. They'll come in for the water, bit of feed around there for them to eat and whatnot. What we do is on the side here, there's a side view I've given here. That's the gates that you put them in. We put a ramp in there, and then over a period of time, we'll raise that ramp by putting a star dropper across the actual ramp, and that brings it higher and higher. So it gets to a point where they can now enter, but they can't exit. So the initial thing was they'll just go in and out, but they'll go into the yards, but if the more and more they get used to using that, and they will get used to using it, they'll go in, but they cannot get out. So that's how you keep them inside the trap. We can demonstrate that to landholders if we assist in setting up these yards on the day when that's required. So please don't hesitate to contact us if we need any assistance out here. The actual trailer actually is a ramp itself, so it's a loading ramp too. So you can take that up to the race rows onto the yard you've had set up, and that can then be loaded onto a trailer or a small truck, and then they can be taken to wherever they need to be taken. Some people will take them away to their own yards. Some will take them to abattoirs and whatnot. There's a number of different things you can do with them. The main thing is they would be removed and destroyed humanely.
Good morning, folks. My name's Ian Hunter. I'm the compliance officer with the Landscape Board. It's a new position that only started in November last year, so I'm learning as we go along as well. With the feral goat things, just a bit of a example of the different types of legislation in relation to the animal pests that we got around the place. With pigs, if you free range pigs and they get out of your property and go onto a neighbouring property, the neighbour is entitled to shoot that pig because it's classed as a feral pig. Goats are different. So if you get goats that come on your property and they're tagged, and you can see they're tagged, you're required to try and round them up, which will be pretty hard, but you're required to try and round them up and try and identify who the owner is. Now that can be done through us or through PIRSA, because they all should have a PIC number on them. If you do get feral goats, a lot of the responsibility goes back to the landowner as how you deal with them. Like Rob said, the first thing would be on the phone to Amy or us, look, we've got these feral goats and we need to know what we're going to do with them. We are relying on the landowners to help out here, and because at this stage, We really don't know how many goats are in this area. And when I say this area, I'll say from the Sturt Highway back through, down through here. It's really, really, as you know, scrubby country. Goats are pretty smart. As soon as they hear a noise, they're into the scrub. We just did a aerial shoot in conjunction with national parks along the border near Maryborough. I don't know if anybody knows, halfway between Loxton and Pinaroo. Along the border there's a great desert, whatever they call it, sort of. And they were seeing mobs of 200 goats. And as soon as they heard the helicopter, they were diving back into the scrub. They shot about 280 of them, and that's all they could get. But there's a lot of goats down there, and I'm not saying that you got the same issue here, but we need to be able to identify where they are if we can, and that's why we're relying on you folks. The legislation, there's a couple of things that helps us out to deal with this. If we get a property owner who's got goats and the goats get out and come on your property, we'll go and speak to them. Under the legislation, we've got to give them an opportunity to fix the problem. So it's voluntary compliance. So we'll go and speak to them and have a discussion about how they need to keep their goats in their property. If it continues and they don't keep them in, we can actually issue them orders to keep them in their property. One of the sections where they issue an order, it's $600 plus $99 levy expiation, so $700 expiation we can actually initially serve on these people if they don't comply with the requirement to keep the goats in. There's really no legislation in relation to what sort of fencing you need. It's there is a guide, and I've got a policy, feral goat policy that I've got 6 copies, so I'm happy to hand this out to people if you want more. I can give you my card and I'll either email it to you, post it to you or whatever. But that'll give you an understanding of what the legislation says, the policy says in relation to feral goats and domestic goats. So there's 2 different. Now, how we identify domestic and or feral, I think if you've got goats on your property and they are not tagged, you class them as feral. It's as simple as that. The first thing we need from the landowners here is an understanding of how many goats are in the area, and that's why feral scan is very important to record these locations. If we find that there's a number of goats congregating in one area, it's a matter of contacting the landscape board, and we have got yards that we can set up. We're relying on the property owners to assist us in that, allowing us on the property, allowing us to set the yards up, keeping us in contact if there's goats in there so we can monitor how many are going in the trap, just things like that. If they leave the property, they need to be tagged. The tag is a PIC number through PIRSA, and most people who farm goats do tag their goats. If a mob of goats that turn up on your property and they're tagged, it's the owner's responsibility to see if he can find out who owns the goats, the landowner's responsibility. If he can't, he needs to contact either contact the landscape board or PIRSA and see if he can find an owner and make that contact. If they come on the property and they're not tagged, then you've got to class them as feral goats. And feral goats is then letting us know so we can set the traps up and things like that.